Again, thank you all for coming, and we want to thank Zero Friction. We want to thank Bill Service for joining the action, helping us arrange this. And some thank yous that I didn't get to were Michael Shank and Chris Kenny and their education committee. We want to thank them for their help in putting this together. A very unique opportunity and a lot of fun to be here with Johnny Miller. And before we get into the official part of the Q&A here, why don't you give us your thoughts on Zero Friction and what really struck you about the company?
Well, I'm not a guy that switches things a lot. You know, I was with McGregor a long time, and then my manager convinced me that Little McGregor was too small to have the three best players in the world on the same staff, Nicholas, Weiskopf, and Miller in the mid-'70s. So he got me over to Wilson and stayed with them for a while. And of course, Ely Callaway talked me into, his wife went to my school, a golf school that was at Pebble Beach, where I played with them at Pebble, Spyglass, and Spanish Bay, which not too many touring pros have sort of babysat guys for 5 days in a camp. But she liked it so much that she told Ely to come up, and next thing I know, Ely said, I want you to play Saturday. I was supposed to be over. Bill Service was running this. I want you to play golf with me at Cypress tomorrow. Ely doesn't ask you if he wants to do it. He said, basically, we are going to be at Cypress tomorrow. So that was a good run for me. But I've had a lot of opportunities to endorse things like Porta-John toilets and things like that. But I'm very picky on who I represent. So I try to keep it pretty low key. But I knew that my value at this stage of my career at 68 was probably with a young company that needs some credibility, but a company that has a good idea, a good product to grow with. So I was sort of waiting for that to come along. And little did I know, Zero Friction, when I saw their glove, and I owned Silverado Resort with two other guys, and also have Round Valley near Salt Lake City. And so I would have liked to actually been in your meetings today, because I probably could have learned some things. Not that I work in the pro shop, but the fact that I have to sort of delegate and dictate what I want to accomplish at the clubs that I own. And so I appreciate you guys and what you guys do. But the glove is a pretty interesting glove, because I know there's medium, large cadets, and there's cadet glove, all these different sizes. This glove, just so you know, it covers the medium hand, and I'm a normal large, like a Titleist large or a TaylorMade large glove. And it fits me just right on the button. Now, if you have a bigger hand than that, then there is a new extra large glove coming out, Joe, right? And that's out now?
It's called the Max.
Max glove. So, like I said, all the colors on the synthetic glove are really cool for kids and for the Rickettes, I call them, Ricky Fowler wannabes. The Rickettes will like all the colors, and the women like all the colors. And it's a good product. It really is a good product. I'm proud to be an owner and an endorsee of Zero Friction, because it is a good product, and there was I think a need for it. So you guys should enjoy it, and hopefully it'll grow. And this is something I'm proud to be part of the beginning of this, just like I was the guy that introduced you to Callaway. I don't know if you guys remember, but I did all the TV commercials for Callaway. And the one thing that I have tried to be is very honest in my announcing and as a person and in my relationships. And so if I say something is good, I'm hoping people will say, well, it must be good because Miller said it was good. I don't do it for the money. I try to be honest with what I say. And I think you guys probably feel that there's a quality product and something that my grandkids are using, my kids will be using. I got all four of my boys are really fine players. Andy was on the PGA Tour, and they went on a church mission, left the tour, which is a very unusual decision after working his whole life to get on tour. Then he decided that he would go on a church mission. But yeah, so I mean, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be in New York. One at Westchester. My manager convinced me that if I could win in New York, that would really be important. And And so I really always played the Westchester Classic because, you know, Nicholas had won there, and all the top players had won there, and the press, all the key press people were in New York. So back then it was a different era, but it was nice to finally have won in '74. And of course, that year I won 9 times, so I had a pretty good run there in '74. And so I had a good career. It was sort of a flash career because my putting went a little bit south. But we were having babies in 1970, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 80. And that's right when was my prime. So dragging the kids on tour and all the strollers and everything else. I remember Nicholson saying how tough it was bringing his family on tour, and I'm thinking, okay, you're running around in a Gulfstream jet, 2 or 3 limos picking you up, you've rented a house, and you got 2 nannies. Yeah, you really got it tough.
Well, let me, Johnny, I'm going to provide just a hint of structure here. The plan is to try and get into the Johnny Miller early years, then we'll go to the tour, and then maybe we'll get to some of the broadcasting and what you've done after the tour. But I want to take you back in time a little bit to when you were younger and just coming out on tour.
Yeah.
Graduated from BYU, All-American, had some success even in college in tour events. But why don't you talk about that first win before we sneak into '73?
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously, even when I was 8 or 10 years old, my dad always called me champ, and he just told me these great stories about pros and pro golf and the tour and slamming Sam Snead and Ben Hogan and Byron Nelson, and I don't know, I just sort of fell in love with the whole shooting match. My dad was really good. He was sort of a genius in psychology, and he said he really worked on my psyche. He said it's very delicate, your psyche in golf. It's a tough game, but he convinced me, and I could feel that I was going to be a champion. He called me champ, and started playing junior tournaments when I was 8. So I moved right on through and won the U.S. Junior and Northern Cal Junior, San Francisco State Junior, and got All-American at BYU. So I was sort of checking off the boxes, getting ready to go on tour. And so when I got on tour, I was just more like a deer in headlights, seeing all these. I'd never played outside California except for the U.S. Junior, which was just up the road in Oregon. I never played golf. I did play the Trans-Mississippi one time, but I basically didn't even know what Bermuda grass was. And I qualified for the tour there at PGA National. And I was missing 2-foot putts, not knowing what I was doing. I thought I was joking, but I had no idea about Bermuda grass, Bermuda grass greens, and the grain of it. So it was a miracle I made that qualifying, because chipping out of Bermuda, I don't know, you know how hard it is to gauge whether it's going to slide up the face or get a jumper, or whether it's going to chunk in the grain is so tough. But there's you'll see the guys on tour, a lot of guys never win except for on Bermuda. They can't win when you go to the West Coast or even up here in New York. It's just a different kind of game. And so lo and behold, I had some chances to win, but the grainiest spot grass-wise Bermuda was Green Island Country Club at the Southern Open, and guess where I won my first tournament? Somehow at the Southern Open, I won the California State Amateur sort of locking my wrist this way, sort of like Zach Johnson. You take your wrist and lock it this way and putt that way, instead of being in that comfortable in between where you can do anything. If you sort of put it there and just keep it like that, it's a pretty good way to putt, by the way, what Zach does. And I won the Cal State Am at 68. I was 28 under par for the week. I won beat Forest Desert 9-8 and won the finals 13-11. I was just cutting the lights out. It worked for a while, but then I decided to try it that week on that Bermuda grass, and adding that little bit of loft. I think it was good. I didn't really know it was good, but I think it was good for those Bermuda grass greens so I could grab the ball at first strike, So then I won that one by 5 shots, and that's just one couple going up into 73, and I was one of the young lions. Ford Motor Company had picked Greer Jones, Lanny Watkins, Jim Simons, Kurt Jones, Lenny Watkins, myself, and did I say Jerry Hurt? And Jerry Hurt. Now, we were the young lions. We were the new, sort of the guys you pick now, the young players. That was the young guns that were sort of wannabes that maybe they thought were going to be the next challenge to the old guard, which was Nicholas Palmer, Flair, Casper, Trevino, and that group. So that led up to basically where you wanted to be in '73.
Well, let me just say, you know, a very near and dear club professional to our heart here in the men's section is Gene Borick. And we talk about his second round score of 65 at Oakmont in the U.S. Open in '73, and how that at the time was a competitive course record there at Oakmont. But to have one of our own, a club pro, Gene from here in the Met section, put up a number like that, pretty amazing. Of course, 2 days later, something else happened. But talk about what you feel about a club pro making noise like that in a major championship.
I mean, there's a lot of club pros going to really play. I mean, you guys know that. It's just whether you can do it when you go to the next level or the next level, you know. You know, you got to get comfortable. Like, it took me a little while on tour to get to know the courses. And just so you know, my first year on tour, I get the Buick Riviera in 1969 in February, and I turned it in the next December, and it had 63,000 miles on it. You know how many times back and forth across the U.S. that is? That was all by myself, so that was a lot of learning that went on there, wouldn't you think? You know, and a lot of new places that I've ever been, and doing it on my own. And you grow up pretty fast when you have that, don't you?
That's for sure.
You do it. But that U.S. Open, I finished, you know, 8th when I was at an amateur at Olympic, and then 2 years before the one, at Marion, I was 5th. And then next year, I was one shot out of the lead, and I buried the bunker on 5 on Sunday, going right at the flag, and had an unplayable lie. Ended up finishing 7th there. I had a good chance to win that week. So I was sort of groomed to be a U.S. Open player. My dad, all the work that we did was all about winning the U.S. Open. U.S. Open was here, and the next biggest tournament was way down here. Okay, the Masters was, you know, the Masters really was just a Bing Crosby Pro-Am, is all it was in the early days. I guess you guys know that. It was just meant to be just a fun event for Bobby Jones, and it was a place you wanted to be invited to, and it just kept getting better and better and better. But when PGA was a big tournament, obviously, but not what the U.S. Open was. The British hadn't really gotten its legs under it until Palmer just played over there at Birkdale, and Nicholas started playing in it, and it started to grow. But the U.S. Open was the championship everybody really wanted to win. So I was sort of groomed by my father to have the kind of game that I could win a U.S. Open someday. So obviously, I thought I knew what I was doing at Oakmont as far as the momentum and the way I was playing. I was a good iron player, and it was. What was interesting about that week was that on Tuesday, this lady comes up to me after the 18th hole, and she says, "I predict things, and you're going to win the U.S. Open this week." I think, yeah, that sounds good. And I don't think anything of it. And she's there on Wednesday after the round, and Thursday, you got to get this. I go in to get my tee time on Wednesday afternoon. They didn't tell you before Wednesday because they didn't want you playing with the guy you're going to get paired with Thursday and get comfortable. So I go in there, and they pair me with Arnold Palmer. And you know what it's like playing at Oakmont, Pittsburgh in 1973 with Arnold Palmer? You know, if he makes a 15-footer and I got a 10-footer, the gallery doesn't exactly stick around to watch me putt. It's like a mad exodus to the next hole, you know. But somehow we both shot 69, 71, and we're in third place. And the ladies there after every round, everything's going good. You're gonna win. And then on Saturday, I go out there and I'm thinking, you know, things are going well. I'm not playing with Palmer, but I go warm up and I go to first tee. I go to get my yardage book, and I got this guy named Luke O'Dean. In those days, the USGA, in their wisdom, didn't allow you to take your tour caddy or any caddy you wanted, let alone your tour caddy. They would just, you guys could all sign up and be caddies if you wanted. Well, Lou had never caddied for anybody that had broken 90 before. This is a true story. He had no clue what he was doing. So I liked him. I didn't need him to help me on anything, but I reached in my bag to get my yardage, and it was not in the first zipper. And I thought, well, it's probably in the bottom one with my golf ball. Wasn't there either. I checked every zipper, no yardage card. And so I'm thinking, Oakmont's like one of the hardest courses in the world. And I'm thinking, I got no yardage, I got no caddy really. I am in big trouble here. So I got on the phone real quick with my wife. I don't know whether there's yardage, it must be by the nightstand. So I played the first 8 holes, and I think I was 6 over through 8 holes. Not that it was all because of that. It was such a shock to my system. Because in those days, there was no laser yardages. You just walked the yardage. And if your caddy walked up, and his yardage was probably not within 5 yards of your yardage. So my yardage card would look like TSLFB, which is T-side, left, fairway bunker, smooth, cut 6 iron to the front right pin, and draw 5 iron to the back left pin. And we didn't necessarily do steps. We just had the club that it would take to get that shot. I don't know if you guys knew that. But that's the way it was done. Nicholas and Phil Rogers were the first ones to start stepping off yardages. It was just before that. But so of course I shoot 76. I was lucky to shoot that. And the lady was not there after that. But I get a letter the next morning, and it says from Iowa. It just says you are going to win the U.S. Open. It's got a sign. There's no return address. And I'm thinking, well. Never had a lady tell me that. I never had a letter that just said that. Thinking that's not going to happen after that 76. But Sunday I went out there and just a very clear voice on the practice. He had about 6 balls left. It said, "Why don't you just open your stance way up?" It was a very clear inspiration, and I was thinking, I don't want to do that. They just said, "No, open your stance way up, not a little up, way up." So I tried it, and I'm walking the first tee, and I hit those last 6 balls pretty well trying that. I'm walking over to the tee. I don't know about that open stance stuff, you know. You guys probably get these thoughts. So I did try it, and I hit it right down the middle, and that first hole Oakmont. How many of you played Oakmont? Probably that first hole, probably the hardest opening hole in the world, isn't it? I mean, if you miss the green short that rough, you can't even hardly hit the green with a 50-yard wedge shot. The green's like this, you're hitting that way. But I hit a 5 iron about 5 feet and made that, and then hit an 8 iron about this far on the next hole, made that. Only shot away from the flag 2 times the whole day. And 3 up the hill, I played a 4 iron left of the pin about 50 feet, made that. And then the next hole I put in the right front bunker and whipped out the bunker shot about that far. So that's 4 under after 4. I started 6 back, and I did what a lot of you guys have done right in the middle of a round. Gee, I got a chance to win. That doesn't usually work real well. I thought the hair at the back of my neck went up, and it's like, I knew that the leaders are probably going to be gagging a little bit. So I figured, man, I might even be tied for the lead by the time they get through 4 holes. And then I left it short from 8 feet, 10 feet, 2 or 3 times, and 3-putted after a great 3-wood on number 8. 3-putted straight uphill from 20 feet. And that's what I went from choking a little on the greens. I didn't really choke tee to green for some reason in my career, but that got me a little bit hot, and then I settled back down. But it was a pretty unusual round in that it was. Had a couple other rounds that might have been slightly better, but not under the same pressure. But I hit every green regulation, missed 1 fairway by about 2 feet. Average birdie putt was about 10 feet 18 times, which it wasn't a spectacular putting round, but it was, under the circumstances, it was meant to be, I guess. I don't know.
Just to clarify, I checked some of the stats, but 18 greens in regulation. A 63 in the final round had never been done. And another remarkable stat was there were only 3 other guys in the field that even broke 70 that day. So it was a staggering round of golf, and one that will be remembered forever. But you've shot lower scores in your career. Was there ever a better round of golf from Johnny Miller than that 63?
I played with Tom Watson on the final round at Tucson, and I was in the lead. I hit every green in 3 out of the 4 par 5s and 2 that day, and hit it even closer to the pin than that day. And Tom Watson, who never compliments anybody, it's tough for him to get it up. He said that's the greatest round of golf I've ever seen, which was usually a guy like him doesn't say that as we're walking off the green. But that 61 was a pretty good day there. I was a streaky player. I would win tournaments off of 1 round. In fact, in 73, 4, 5, and 6, even in 1 round a week was always going to be a 64 or lower. It might be the Tuesday practice round, the Wednesday Pro-Am round, but there was always going to be a round of 61, 2, 3, or 4 every week. It was one, and then there was always rounds where I couldn't make any putts, and it was just the way. When I won the World Open at Pinehurst, I shot the course record there 63, and then had a bunch of those kind of rounds. When I won the British, I broke the course record the last day to win the British. That's just the way I played. I played actually, and I think one reason why I was able to shoot those low scores is I played really 4 golfers really. I had a little crossover low hook, and it was a chi-chi shot, like a cross court in ping pong or tennis, sort of cross it over, and then had a Lima high draw with a high fall through and kicked the club up that way, and then had a Trevino shot this way for the right pins and dogleg rights, and my own swing went pretty straight. So my theory was if I had those 4 shots grooved, I would be pretty good, because if my swing wasn't working, I figured somebody wouldn't be choking that day. Somebody could play out of the 4 guys. And I'm the one that sort of started this being a drag race. I had a car racer and car nut. Started this green light, yellow light, red light golf. And if you have all the shots and you got confidence in them, you can have more green light shots than a guy that hits nothing but draws. A guy hits draws, you're not going to like the right pins. You're not going to like the dogleg rights. But if you have those shots that I just explained, you can have a lot of go shots where you can go at the flags, and you can shoot those low round. And so Corey Pavin got where he was doing similar things. I was playing a game which I recommend all of you guys teach, by the way. You play it as a game in that you have the student, even if he's a 110 shooter, see what he can shoot. I haven't hit 9 shots in a row. I'll start with the normal height, straight fade draw, and then a low series straight fade draw, and a high series straight fade draw. And you do 9 shots as a game, and you see how many out of 9 you can hit. And if you can, I pretty much could average about 8.5 out of 9. And when you do that right before you tee off the last 9 balls you hit on the range, you go through that series of that game and hit 9 out of 9 or whatever, you're ready for pretty much anything out on the course. It's a hugely important thing, especially if somebody wants to get better. To be able to, you might find that they can hit a lean-in, low cut fade better than anybody on tour. So they should be using that a lot when the call is there for that kind of a shot. And you got to convince the guys you're teaching that, like Trevino said, the ugly is good if you do it every time. And Trevino was the one that got me out of my slump, and he said that just hit it low. If you're hitting it bad, enough time to get offline. You guys laugh, but I was very good with the lead. I had the best winning percentage with the lead of anybody until Tiger, and I had the yips. I had the yips for most of my career. But because I had these shots grooved, I was able to sort of work around the fact that I was not a Steve Scott putter. If he did a putter for me, I'd have won 75 tournaments instead of 25. But I was able to hit it well and do well under pressure because I had more shots grooved. And I was willing to use them. A lot of people have the shots, but they won't use them under pressure. They go back to their little noonie blanket. So that's my little lesson to you guys. Try that, it'll help your own game too.
That's a great one. Actually, we had Cameron McCormick here in the section, and we talked about some of the theories he uses with Jordan Spieth, and a lot of it was the wedge play, high one, low one, mid one. So that's great advice. And Paul, by the way, keep a copy of that tape and send it to Steve. He's gonna want that. We talked about the British Open in '76, the U.S. Open in '73. A lot of people don't know you were runner-up at the Masters in '71, '75, and '81. So I'm tempted to ask you, is there a near miss that you look back on and say, man, that's one I really should have had?
No jacket, just a green vest is all I got. But yeah, I would have liked to have won the Masters. I should have won the Masters the first time I played it as a pro. That was just shot a couple 72s, and I was 10 under on the weekend, going into number 15. And then the leaderboards back then weren't very up to date, but somebody says you got the lead, and I lift out my putt for birdie on 15 and try to go with that back right pin, which is impossible with a 4-iron back in those days. And then I went in the right bunker and did a 360 horseshoe from 10 feet. And Charlie Goody ended up birdieing 2 out of the last 3 holes to nip me. But Nicholas said, "Oh, don't worry about it." He was second. By the way, we're on the stand up there, and they say, and for second place, Johnny Miller and Jack Nicklaus, and he leaned over and he said, "Big deal, huh?" I was like, "Well, it is sort of a big deal." But that's the way Jack thought, you know. Yeah, I would have liked to win the Masters. But the turning point really for me wasn't the winning the U.S. Open, even though that Bertie Hansen came up to me the next week after the U.S. Open. He said, he didn't say nice going, he said, "Now that you're U.S. Open champion, act like one, okay?" Now that you're U.S. Open champion, act like one. I was like, what are you saying? You saying I haven't been acting like one? But it did open my eyes to the fact that there's responsibility there when you win our national championship. But it really, I still thought I was just a young lion at that point, even though it sort of propelled me out of that 5 young guy sitting there. But what really turned it around for me was Nicholas won the PGA, so we played the World Cup in Marbella, Spain together. So I played with him Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But you never got to play with Jack Nicklaus that many days. And again, I shoot 74 the first round, but then that anybody play that Nueva Andalucia course, probably the hardest course almost in Europe. I shoot 65 the second round, which broke the course record by 3 shots, and then shot a couple decent rounds on the weekend. And won individually, and we won as a team. But it was that playing with Jack for 6 straight days, comparing my game against him. And I thought he was here and I was down here somewhere. And the feeling in my mind was that your time has come. You know, in life, we have tendencies to look at the other guy and think, "Oh, well, he's better, and I'm getting better." But at some point there, you have to say, "My time has come. It's time to do it right now." And I opened up and won the first tournament of the year, the second tournament of the year, the third tournament of the year, the 6th tournament of the year, the 8th tournament of the year. And it was because I had that belief and confidence, but it was really that playing with Jack. And I respected it, don't get me wrong, but I knew he hit the ball maybe 5-8 yards longer than I did, and his long irons were a little better than mine, but I knew my middle irons and short irons were way better than his. And I didn't maybe give enough credit for his wisdom and his. I had a tendency to be seduced by pins and shots, where he didn't get seduced by anything on the course, which is an amazing trait. He was the first guy really to lay the ball up with 1 irons and 3 woods all the time. Everybody else was hitting driver, you know. But he had a game plan, a little like Ben Hogan, and he didn't get seduced like I did. Of course, he didn't shoot that many 61s or 2s either, because he didn't play that kind of game. He wanted to hit 20 feet from the hole. to me that was sort of boring, but I wish I would have learned that, his philosophy in the majors, because you don't win majors by going at every pin. Lanny Watkins did that, he won the PGA at Pebble, but he should have won more than one major, and I probably should have won more than I did, but I did learn a lot from Jack, and he was a big inspiration to me. And even when I was in my slump, it was Jack Nicklaus that said, "You don't have to worry about him. He's got plenty of talent. He'll figure it out. And he'll be back again." And that meant a lot to me, because I got really burnt out with having all those kids in the '70s. We have a saying growing up that no amount of success can compensate for failure in the home. And I wasn't failing in the home, but you know, the greatest gift you give your kids is your time, right? And you can be all as nice as you want, but if you don't give them your time and your love and whatever, you're sort of missing out on something more important than golf. So I was trying to balance those two things, and it was really tough to do. But as it turned out, I got great kids, great wives, so that's more important, as you guys know. Steve Scott even said that. Basically, he's got a family now and didn't chase that little white ball maybe for the glory of the tour. You know, it's a fun life, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of guys that lost their family chasing that little white ball, or didn't lose their family but deserved to lose it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think you're talking to a room of people that certainly know what it's all about, trying to find that balance.
Yeah.
And 6 kids, wife, and a Buick Riviera. I mean, that's really challenging.
Yeah, that wouldn't work. Yeah, I have 23 grandkids too, so well, pretty big family. In California, they go, "Geez, don't you know what causes all those kids?" In Utah, they say, "Is that all you're going to have?"
Well, you brought up the slump. You brought up the challenge there on the greens as well, and you know, I just have to say it's remarkable that you found a way through it. You had some help, you had some guidance, you had some confidence, and you went on to win after that slump, and all the way into 1994. At age 46, you were basically retired from the tour, and I still remember watching that AT&T where you won that event. Just inspiring to have success over really a 25-year period on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, I mean, that was a fun win because Norman was not liking my announcing, Greg Norman, because I was sort of telling it like it is, and you know, wasn't basically kissing his butt all the time, and some of the other players, and he would say, "Now Miller's been out of the game too long, he doesn't know what he's talking about." Well, as it turned out, in '94, I played 2 tournaments and won the same amount of tournaments he did, playing the whole year.
These are the tidbits that make you so good.
But you know, I do announce the way I announce my own game. I'd be the first one to say I choked on a putt or made a mental error or whatever, and I'd also be the first one to tell you how good I played if I played good. It was just what it was, you know, just the way it was, you know. So when I got on TV, it was the parameters of what I would say and what the other announcers would say was quite a bit different, you know. And but I thought golf needed to grow, and the only way it was going to grow really was to make it more interesting to the viewer that maybe just tunes in once in a while. So I thought I would teach more like you guys do, because I love to teach. I'm sort of a swing nut, you know, and also wanted them to know that that wedge that was 30 feet right of the hole was not a great shot. And it actually was sort of a crappy shot, basically. And let them know that when I said it was a great shot, it was truly a great shot. It was not a real good shot. It was a great shot. So I just wanted to, you know, call. To me, I thought the most interesting part of golf, and I think you guys have got to admit it, it's the greatest game in the world to choke on. Is it not? So if you don't talk about the choke factor, you're missing the whole point of this game. I mean, it's the greatest game to overthink and to fall apart. And so that all those years, the announcers, even to this day, they're afraid of hurting feelings or whatever. But it's that's why Tiger was so great, right? He would actually play better down the stretch. I That's why Nicholas was so great, Torino. And that's what made golf, made those guys separate themselves from everybody else. And you got a guy named Jordan Spieth now that has that ability, doesn't he? He can make those putts. He's got a 20-footer in the last hole. Most people watching TV are thinking, he's probably going to make this, right? Where everybody else is like, well, I'll be able to 3-putt, you know, like Dustin Johnson did at Chambers Bay, you know? So, you know, that's sort of where I came from on TV. And I was announcing for 5 years. I was only playing the AT&T every year because my kids wanted to play in it with me, one of them each year. So I was not playing but about 10 rounds of golf a year those years for 5 years while I was announcing. But I was playing the AT&T, and so for me to have a chance to win and then be able to beat Tom Watson down the stretch doesn't get a lot better than that for an announcer to win. You know, when you've been out of the game for 5 years. So I guess I might have retired a little early, but I was like the first guy to win. I won the South Africa $1 million tournament the first year, 9-hole sudden death playoff with Seve, and on the first extra hole, I was so nervous. Seve had knocked it that far on a par 3 over water. I had about a 12 foot down the hill with the right to lefter. My wonderful little voice said, "There's no way you can make this putt." Anyway, I already knew that. I was dang nervous. He said, "Just close your eyes and hit it." It's like, I'm saying, I have never closed my eyes putting in my life. This is a heck of a time to try it. So I closed my eyes and made the putt. I beat him 2 hours later for this $500,000 first prize. The next biggest prize in golf was 160. So this was a big, sort of big deal. And Seve, his brother Valdemaro and his other brother told me, Seve cried for like 2 hours after that. Seve liked money a lot. But a lot of those kind of things, inspiration. When I won the AT&T 87 on 15, I was on again, I had this downhill left to right, and I looked at this putt and I saw the red light was on. So the thing said, well, just look at the hole when you putt. You know, you already yipped it on the last hole. So I had to fight this all the time. And I'm thinking, if I try to look at the hole, the heel of the putter might stick in the ground, I might whiff it on national. You know, they got this downhill like this, the heel might catch it. And I thought, well, I always listen to his little voice. I looked at the hole, I'm like, how do you do this? I'm like, I've never even tried it before. Okay, boom, knocked it right out of the hole. Then made it on the last hole, and Stan Stewart was leading the whole week, and he bogeyed 17, and now he's one behind me, and at 18 I'm waiting on the green to see if there's a playoff, and he doesn't make the putt for birdie, and he walks by me and he says, "You were lucky, that'll never happen again." I was like, "Oh, thanks for the congratulations." I know he's passed away, but I mean, that's a funny thing to say to a pro. But he was known as Avis then because he was always second, and I guess he figured I was sort of over the hill by then, and he figured, geez, I lost it down to a guy that's over the hill. So he didn't like that too much. But I've tried, I call them wood keys. It stands for works only one day. That's the way all these tips are that I come up with. You know, so that's my whole game putting wise was on Band-Aids. I was the first guy to use a long putter up the arm like Kuchar does. And so I've tried, you name it, I've tried it. But unfortunately that was not my gift to be blessed with a beautiful putting stroke.
Well, I want to get back to some of the announcing, certainly, but before I do that, 35 professional wins, 25 on the PGA Tour, but also a member of 2 winning Ryder Cup teams, and we're coming up on an exciting year here, 2016. Also winner on some World Cup teams, but what are your thoughts, just an overview of the Ryder Cup scenario, what Team US is doing, are we heading in the right direction?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
That's a question. We could spend a lot of time on that one. I only played 2 Ryder Cups because I was playing only like 15, 16 tournaments, 17 tournaments a year, and they took it off a two-year accounting, and so a guy like Tom Kite was playing 28 or 30. In 2 years, he's playing darn near 60 events, and I was playing 30. So really was hard for me to get enough points. And the other thing is the PGA of America, one of their biggest faux pas in history, which I would be surprised at how many of you know this, that you could not play in the Ryder Cup until you were on tour for 5 years. So my second year on tour, I think I finished, would have been close to making that team, and then I won the US Open, was second in the British in '73, and it was not on that team either because I wasn't on tour for 5 years. How many of you guys actually do that? I mean, it's like you get about, you guys are the cream of the crop too that would know. There's probably not one out of 1,000 golfers that know of that wonderful rule that they had back then. Nicklaus won the US Open and won against Palmer in a playoff, and he wasn't eligible for that Ryder Cup either. So that was, not sure who made that rule, but that was a beauty. But getting back to the Ryder Cup, I've been covering the Ryder Cup since the War by the Shore in 1991. I still think that might have been the greatest golf event ever televised. You guys remember that? Skirmishes between Sevy and Zinger and, you know, Longer and Irwin at the end. You know, just the Sevy stuff, and then of course, remember Calcavecchia against Monty, who loses what, last 5 holes was it? Before, yeah, five holes, and he's down at the beach crying and barfing in the literally. Yeah, the good thing there wasn't any knives or guns around. I mean, there was so much to that Ryder Cup, you know, because Europe, you know, Jack Nicklaus said back in the late '70s that Great Britain wasn't good enough to play the USA, and you need to add Europe. Of course, adding Europe was adding Sevy and Langer and Lyle and Pinheiro and Woosnam and all these Europeans that were really good, you know. And so immediately it became extremely close. And in fact, Europe started beating the U.S. It was almost desperate. They called them War by the Shore. They had the camouflage military hats on the U.S. It got a little over the top, but it was incredible. I had never felt that kind of energy. And the Ryder Cup has just gotten, as you guys know, it's just bigger and bigger and bigger. And what happened at Medina still makes me want to use the barf bag that Calcavecchia was using about what happened there that last day of how we blew that Ryder Cup. That was not good. And but you have to hand it to the Europeans or Europe that they can make those pressure putts. I say, you know, there's all different levels of basically choking or whatever. Here's got guys that could win the John Deere Classic and they can win those kind of tournaments. But they can't win the Muirfield and Memorial, and they can't win at Harvard Town or, you know, those kind of tournaments. But then you can handle maybe Muirfield and a World Golf Championship, but you get nervous in the majors. You can't play a normal game there. Then you can maybe pop out a win in a major, but the highest level of pressure is probably that Ryder Cup, higher than a major. Guys literally can't hit off the first tee, and they're so nervous they can't hit off the first tee. I mean, these are top players. They get so pumped up and jacked up to play for a team. And that atmosphere is just crazy good. It's going to be a Hazel team, which will be really good next year. And but we are desperate right now, aren't we? I mean, literally, it's for the good of the Ryder Cup. They ought to just let us win. I mean, it's getting where, and you know, I always say that I talk about boomerangs when I speak to people that, you know, when you tell lies, there are these lies of boomerangs out there making them turn. And sometimes it takes a week to come back and hit you in the back of the head. Sometimes it takes 20 years. But the boomerang of the Ryder Cup is Jack Nicklaus saying, you guys are not good enough. You better add Europe. Well, I'm just waiting for this boomerang making its turn. And somebody in Europe's going to say, you know, USA is just not good enough. I need to add Canada and South America. I'm just waiting for this. And it's been how many years? Almost 40 years since Jack's comment. Maybe I'm going to be the one to say it. But,
I'll be listening carefully.
I might do should, no, really, what you're reminding.
Well, speaking of announcing, I for one have seen you in action on site at a number of major championships, and whether the camera's on or the camera's off, Johnny Miller is pretty much Johnny Miller, and you speak the way you think, and that candor, that honesty, I think has made you one of the best announcers, but it also has brought some critics, and there are people who have been offended. If I might, could I ask if there were any comments that you maybe wish you hadn't said? I mean, have some members of the tour come to you and you said to them...
I don't think we have time for that.
Any you'd like to take back? Any mulligans?
Oh, yeah, I've made some double bogeys, but my theory is if you'd say something that you shouldn't have said or do something you shouldn't have done, try to apologize within 24 hours if you can. That includes at home with your wife, your kids. Don't let it fester, Just, I said some things like, Leonard Thompson's swing. I said, it's just not a good swing. It's a terrible swing. It has no rhythm and flow to it. Of course, he's a guy that's sort of a tough guy, He came up to me, I hear you don't like my swing. I said, no, I actually don't like it that much. I said, you don't have much rhythm and flow to it. And it wasn't, the thing is you can't just, my theory about if you're going to say something like that, you have to say what the guy needs to do to make it better. Does that make sense to you? In other words, you say, this guy is really hitting it lousy, must be nervous. You say, you notice he's hooking everything now, which he normally doesn't do. Then you got to say, well, what he needs to do is, he's getting into the hitting zone, and that right elbow's popping out a little early, and that's kicking it to the left. Instead of keeping that elbow pointed at his right hip bone through the impact area, still pointing at the right hip bone, then releasing it, and that will stop it. So in my mind, that's a fair commentary that I'm really trying to give the guy a lesson, even though I never had anybody come up and say, well, that really helped, John. No, you're not going to, especially the older guys, didn't like the way I announced, because they were used to, like Dave Morrow joined NBC after ABC run, and he said, I just been making all this money gilding the roads, basically all flowery, polishing, the gold plating, and it was very pleasant. And you wouldn't want on the air and one network have 4 Johnny Millers on the same team. But I just thought that this is an interesting analogy. My mother made the best blackberry pies in the world that I've ever eaten. And the secret was when she told us to go pick the blackberries, is you didn't pick all 5 out of the first 5 blackberries all ripe. You had to have like 4 ripe, but one that was like half ripe, because that gave it the pop. And that's the way I figure the way it should be when you're working with people or your kids or whatever. Is mostly it's a compliment, but every once in a while you got to do the half ripe one when the timing's right. And that's the way it is with announcing. If it's all you buy. Yeah, I mean, if you just have all ripe berries, it's sickeningly sweet. So, you gotta have some yin and yang, don't you think? A little bit. You gotta be real. I mean, life is not all about ripe blackberries, okay? Is it? Anybody had all ripe blackberries here? I mean, golf is a game you hit right down the middle. Yeah, it's a great drive. You get out there in a divot that Craig Stouter made that's that deep. You go, hey, that was a perfect drive. What's going on? So now because it's in that divot, you go over this bunker with a front hole location. You hit it right at the flag, but it comes out low because it's in the divot and buries underneath the lip of the bunker. Then you got to take an unplayable line and knock it out, miss the putt, make a double bogey, and you say, hey, that was a perfect drive. What's going on with this game? But that's sort of like life a little bit at times, right? It's not always because you deserve it. That's what makes golf great, is because it prepares you a little bit better for life. Don't you think so? Does anybody feel that way?
Oh, yes.
I even say that's probably going to get struck down someday, but I think even Jesus, if he was playing, gets a little peed off once in a while. This is a tough game. It's a tough game mentally. It really is. So it's the ultimate game of handling adversity and unexpected things, and just it's just an amazing game, no doubt about it.
One more thing on announcing. U.S. Open has headed to another network, but how excited are you to be broadcasting the British Open? And not this year, but next year, Royal Birkdale. Kind of cool.
Yeah, we're gonna do it this coming year, of course, at Troon. We bought ABC, ESPN out of their contract, so that's going to be really fun to do that. I still would rather do the U.S. Open, but I had so many calls during that U.S. Open. You can imagine when we weren't doing it about how Fox was doing that wonderful job.
I had a feeling we might hear something.
But I never picked up one phone call because I knew I couldn't keep my mouth shut. So I just stayed out of it. I knew they were trying hard, but you know, the inside story that you guys might have heard the opening comments of Joe Buck, but like 18 months before, we had found out we had lost the rights to the U.S. Open. For 12 years, they did $1 billion. $1 billion. I think NBC had did 600 million. And people called me up and said, well, what do you think? We had a little press conference. What do you think about Fox getting the U.S. Open? I said, well, I wish them well and hope they can do it. I'm obviously disappointed not doing it. I said, but covering the U.S. Open is not like just falling out of a tree, you know. It's not easy to do, you know. I wasn't cutting them down. Well, the opening comments that Joe Buck said, I don't know if anybody here heard it, but he says, this is the first thing he says, he goes, well, this is Fox, and we're falling out of a tree covering the U.S. Open. So I'm sure most people thought, what the heck is he talking about? Falling out of a tree. But that was, I guess he took it personally about the falling out of a tree. But getting back to the last thing on the Ryder Cup, I don't really know what to do about the Ryder Cup. If I was captain, I definitely wouldn't be picking up guys that have lots of experience of losing. He's got experience, you know, he's been losing every match. I don't really want that guy. Give me a guy like Patrick Reed, or even anybody, Chris Kirk, somebody that is a good player, that maybe did well in match play when he was younger, but has never lost a match. Give him a chance. Maybe he's another Patrick Reed, a young guy, or Spieth that can play match play. You know, guys that can putt. Usually the guys that can putt are the guys that win in match play, not the ball strikers. They're always the hardest ones to beat, the good putters. And so don't have guys that got baggage in between their ears that have been terrible records in picking as a captain's pick. If I was the captain, I'd probably say, I don't want to even look at the list. I'm going to pick the whole team. I don't want anybody in for good. I'm going to just pick the whole team. Of course, they wouldn't do that, but obviously most of them would be from the list. But I just think that some guys actually I'm not even sure they want to be on the Ryder Cup. Part of them wants to be on the Ryder Cup, but part of them can't handle the pressure. So it takes a special kind of guy, like I said, to handle Ryder Cup. And I think that Spieth might be the answer. And with Patrick Reed and some of the other guys, that maybe somehow they won't putt so well in Europe. And maybe the U.S. can finally win, because it needs to have a win by the U.S. real soon for these matches to keep the interest up, no doubt about it.
Well, I have a lot of questions here, but I think I want to open it up to the audience. And why don't you guys think over some things you might want to ask Johnny Miller? Joe?
Johnny, I was a 17-year-old high school senior, followed you at Westchester, and it relates to a TrackMan kind of a thing. And I watched you on the 13th hole, and you hit an 8-iron, being the loud mouth that I am. I go, that went in, and you said, that's a couple of feet short. and I said, you can't see the pin because it's up the hill. I said, a couple of feet, I can walk it up with it. And it was a few feet short. You smiled at me, and you made the putt. You get to the par 3, you hit the 9-iron, you go, that's close. And it was like, you never missed a shot. That was the most unbelievable. And you did it, my point is, you did it without TrackMan. And I don't teach with TrackMan, I'm an old time kind of a teacher type of thing, but it was all feel, and you were switching clubs and getting the shot. And
yeah, the thing I have with my irons is I can hit within 1 yard of the yardage. if it was 149, it was either going 149, 150, or 148. And so if it was on line with the pin, I would sort of piss off the other pros because when halfway there, thank you very much. but people, I had sort of a set backswing, and then I would just dial in whatever speed I wanted at the bottom. But the one advantage that I had, and I'm probably not one person in this room knows the one thing that I did that was different, and I don't even know if I even recommend. I've never taught anybody. Is I had my grip V's, both of them pointing at my left shoulder. So my impact fix could not be forward, where a guy that grips it here can return the shaft here, 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 and here. He can do all kinds of things with the loft. Now I could go this way and screw it up, but with my hands this way, I couldn't go any more forward. So if I just returned it and hit it flush, I knew that I had dialed in perfect shaft lean and got perfect distance. And I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but that was the advantage that I had. And I knew it was an advantage. And Hogan talked about that supination position. And I had both of my hands in that same position with the wrinkles in the back of the right wrist at a diagonal. So it wasn't, in other words, the impact, there's a diagonal here. So it was, and that John Schlee, by the way, also did that same move. He was a Hogan disciple, but that's not really being taught now. Now most of the guys, the common thing now, since you guys are teachers, and I don't know if you knew this, but the swing now is they got stronger grips when they fall through, the palm faces the target. This left palm, almost every guy on tour, watch it now in the recoil, and they hit, when they come down like that, that palm is exactly at the target. In our era, when you came down, you came down this way. You guys remember that? Almost everybody came down this way. Now they're this way. And it's sort of a Hogan move also, that one iron you saw Marion by Hogan, and the Japanese picked up on this before, but I don't know if anybody really teaching it, but Hogan would twist it this way, which gives the palm, and it made the face stay open for that high fade. You understand what I'm saying? So Hogan was the first one really to get that off of a fairly weak grip, which makes you cut it. With a strong grip, it just makes you hit it straight. But the Japanese players really picked up on that in the last 15 years, and now I'm not sure it's gravitated to where the grip is much stronger than it used to be. To make that strong grip work, you definitely have to keep the palm this straight. So watch it on TV. Just notice that is what 9 out of 10 of the guys, that's the position that they're going into. And I don't even know if they're being taught that, because I've never heard anybody really teaching it, but that's what's happened. That's a big change in the game between our era and the new era.
Yes. With your proclivity to shoot low scores,
Yeah.
Did you have a mental key down the stretch? Like, keep going, or freeze that you said to yourself, or something like that?
My theory is if that hole opened up, I better get all I can that day, because tomorrow might be an anthill, Probably not a good attitude, but if I had it going, the thing I was thinking when I had it really going is, would you guys hurry up and hit, because I can't wait to hit this. And the second thought was, I probably shouldn't even say this, I almost felt like I was showing off. That's really sort of the ultimate in confidence. Get out of the way, because I'm going to show you something. And that's confident, and that's a winning attitude. When I was in my slump, it was like, oh geez, do I have to hit? Why don't you guys hit first? You guys ever felt that way? That was the way I felt when I was playing bad. But when I was really going well, I just couldn't wait to hit. I just couldn't wait to just knock the dang pin right out of the green, And one year at Pebble, I hit the first 61 greens in a row in regulation. Those little tiny greens. So that was my forte, was hitting it. Obviously, I didn't have the putting necessarily to go with it, but the fact that I'd learned those 4 shots, and they were so different in my mind, the 4 different swings, that it made the game really clear to me of what I wanted to do. And I think I still think Corey Pavin, like I said, was hitting all those shots. Tiger started hitting all those shots. I mean, Tiger, if you remember, when he would hit in the rough, he'd hit it with the foot up like that. Do you remember that? To get out of the long grass, which he was in a lot. And then he picked up now I had this for my high fades, by the way, where he hit it in helicopter finish. You know how they make the club? You know, all the black players, like every black player, had that fall through. Literally, from Jim Thorpe to Lee Elder to you name them. And my next door neighbor, Rod Funza, had that fall through as an anti-hook move. Like when you want to hit a high cut around the tree, you'll just hit that thing and go like that, like Arnie used to do. It's sort of an anti-hook move. So that was in my repertoire also for the high cut, which I didn't talk about. It's not one of the five, but that was sort of when I didn't like to use that often, but it did work. Sevy did that all the time. Tiger got it, I think, from Sevy, not from the black players. So,
one other little piece about the Met PGA here, Charlie reminded me of it. You were here doing a junior clinic at Westchester Country Club. At the time, Tiger was rising up as an amateur, and you said to the kids there that day at Westchester that if his health holds up, this guy could really make some noise. Now, lo and behold, the health has been a problem, along with a host of other non-health related things, but are we going to see Tiger Woods competing in a major again? Is he going to be back?
my hunch, this is a real hunch, I don't even think it's reality, but, you know, Phil just left Harmon. You guys knew that, right?
Okay.
So what door does that open for Tiger? Now, Harmon said he would never teach Tiger, but that's thinking he still had Phil, and Phil paid 10 times more than Tiger would pay. Harmon said that he was really cheap. And, but if Harmon wants to solidify his ranking as #1 teacher or whatever, if he could turn this aircraft carrier around with Tiger Woods, then there's nothing more that he could ask for, that opening, right? Don't you think? I don't know what's going to happen, but right. It just came to me like 2 nights ago. I was thinking, wonder if Tiger might call. Tiger called me actually in 1999 to help him with his iron game because somebody told him I was a good iron player. I think Nicholas said I was the best short iron player he'd ever seen, and Tiger was having trouble dialing in the right distance that you guys are talking about with the short irons. But my son Andy was just going on tour with Steve Scott. I think he played against Andy in the Western Amateur, and he was going on tour. I didn't think that would go over real big with my 4 sons to be teaching Tiger and Andy at the same time. You know? So I went family rule there, and I've had sort of not regrets, but yeah, that would have been an honor to work with him. But I wasn't willing to chase around the country for him. I would give him an occasional lesson if he wanted to come to me, but I'm not going to go with my family, big family. Wasn't going to be able to tag along with Tiger, but obviously great talent there with Tiger. But you know, he snapped his leg. There's only 3 guys that really snapped their left knee. I was the first one where my foot would jump back. You know, I'd get sort of a karate move. I was the only player in my era that was faster after impact than impact. Tested. And I'd try to be sort of relaxed till I got right in the hitting zone. When I got right here, it was sort of like a Tiger move. I mean, a karate move where that hit would jump back and kick that club in there, you know, like a snap, almost like when you hit karate, you boom, right there. That's the way I swung. You know, it's very relaxed. My key was to get to the top of my backswing with absolutely 0 tension. Totally opposite of what. Who does that? Fred who? Fred Couples. You ever seen him? You just go, whoop, that's his backswing. Goes here, and then he drops it in here, and then snaps it at the bottom. He actually does that same sort of move. I'm not saying that's the way you should swing. But I was, Laura Davies was the other player that left foot jump back, and she was the longest hitter on the women's tour. And then, of course, Tiger, what people don't realize that Tiger was 18 or 19 with the ball and equipment now. He would hit it 20 yards past Bubba Watson. 20, not 10, 20 yards. He had 100. When he played at Pumpkin Ridge, He had a little short tailor-made driver with a small head. There were bunkers like on number 9 that were 305 carry. He would, with that old equipment, he would airmail those bunkers with a heavy West Coast air by 10 or 15 yards. So he would have been carrying the ball with the ball and the equipment now probably 340 with 132 miles an hour club head speed. Yeah, he was crazy long. When he was hitting 8-iron and 9-iron to 15 at Augusta, that didn't thrill the Green Coat boys too much. But you know, he obviously is trying to work on this explosive power of his 19-year-old body in the old days, and he really should be letting his irons do the talking, because people notice his iron game is good. Tiger's iron game has never been in a slump. It's just that if you want to get in a slump, the easiest way to get in a slump on the PGA Tour historically, starting from way back with Marty Fleckman and whether it's Ian Baker Finch, even at times Tom Watson, Seve Ballesteros, the guys that all get in a slump, what do they get in a slump with?
Yeah.
It's the driver. That's the one. David Duval just goes from fantastic to can't break an egg. And I was the same way. When I went in my slump, it was the driver. I picked up a lot of muscle working on these ranches I was buying and looked good, but, but I had no stretching. We never stretched in the old days. John Wayne didn't stretch, you know. Our Eric was sort of macho. He didn't get down and stretch, but we should have been. But that's what Tiger needs to do, is just maybe put the ball on the ground. Like if I was really nervous under pressure, I just aim down the left side, tee it low, take it back slow and yell kill. And if I came down too fast, it would hit a cut every time. You got half the 3/4 of the people you teach, that's what they do. They go slow fast, and that produces a wonderful slice. And it's a great shot under pressure, a great shot of the right pin, it's a great shot on a dogleg right. Is tee it down low, take it back slow, and come down too fast, and it hits a cut every time. It's absolutely a money shot. It's a shot that if you got somebody you're teaching, you say, that is a money shot, keep that one, but let's work on a little draw now.
I know a lot of people with that money shot.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We want to maybe get a couple more. We've got maybe 5 minutes before we have to wrap it up.
Yes.
Olympics coming this summer. Why team? Why not team as opposed to individual?
Yeah, this is a question about the Olympics. Why is it individual versus the team? I was the same way. I was thinking, give these other countries that maybe would be long shots, but in a best ball tournament, you know, if you get it going, you can beat good players if you get it going. 2 guys, you know, you can feel, you can handle the pressure. But so I'm not saying it's bad. The U.S. can have 4 players, by the way. They probably will have 4 players. Most countries have to qualify that aren't. They don't have ranking players, but there'll be some countries with 4 players, but not too many. And so it's going to be basically just another medal play event. Hopefully we don't get 3 out of the 4 players guys that you don't want to watch. Hopefully the right guys make that team. You know, not that there's anything wrong with Chris Kirk, but it's probably not the kind of player you want to watch for 4 Chris Kirks. But he's a good friend of mine. It was a good friend of mine. But no, I'm just kidding. So it should be exciting, and it probably will be a little nerve-wracking to win the first, well, since what? I think it was in Chicago or something, 1920 or something, is that right? Yeah. Something like that. So it'd be cool to have that gold medal, wouldn't it? I would think a player would think that's pretty tricky to win the Olympics, you know, first Olympics in golf for almost 100 years. So
An announcing milestone perhaps for Johnny Miller too.
let's see here. I'm trying to figure out, you know, I did leave the tour too early. I did it on purpose because I didn't want to look like roadkill out on tour, you know, with my putting yips. I'm trying to figure out when I should quit announcing, because I haven't lost my marbles quite yet, and but I have a tendency to leave a little prematurely. But I definitely have 2 more years, and it'd be nice to do the British now. The Olympics, I'm missing something down in Augusta, Georgia. That I've always wanted to do. Yeah, give me the 13th hole like Tom Weisskopf used to do, and just have me say 20 words a show, but I just want to at least say I did the Masters once, but I don't have a lot of quote-unquote goals in golf that haven't been met. I mean, I know I could have probably won more tournaments if I would have sacrificed my family a little bit and practiced occasionally. I never used to practice. I was too interested in the ranches and fishing. I shouldn't have done that. I should have said, well, I'll wait on that until I'm 40. But all in all, golf's been really great to me, and got a great team with NBC. Dan Hicks is amazing. He lives. How many of you guys know Dan Hicks? Just such a good guy, and Roger's fun to work with. Now we got David Faraday I'm going to be bouncing around with. That ought to be quite interesting. Like myself with David, I wonder if he can keep the F word out of this conversation. But, he thinks that means fine. But it's been a fun run. I got a lot to be grateful for, and that's sort of the secret in life, is to have gratitude to Heavenly Father and to your parents and just people to help you with the game and taught you lessons along the way and pass those things on. Gary Clare says the greatest gift he got from Heavenly Father was his energy. And when you guys get home from those long days of working on the course, even if you got to stay in the car for 10 minutes when you get home, gearing up that energy to play the most important shot of the day when you get home. Do it. Act like, oh, I'm tired, just leave me alone, I just want to watch TV, But show some energy to your family. Show them that love and energy. It's your kids, grandkids, really important that they feel that energy. That's the greatest sign of respect, is your energy. So I'll close with that. I hope I didn't bore you, but it's great to be here for Zero Friction, and hope you enjoy the gloves, and I enjoyed being with you guys. I love this area. You guys keep up the great tradition you have going on. Good luck with your families, especially. Appreciate all of you. Thanks a lot.
We can't.